Kaguya is a rank 4 healer pilot or engineer. Let's go through her abilities. So first we have is New Year's Blessing. Upon deployment and every 20 seconds thereafter, both the action speed of all enemy units within range is decreased by 0.6 times and the damage that they receive is increased by 50% for 20 seconds. Pretty good stuff. Then she has a pilot power up high, lowers the deployment cost of every Lelouch in your team by 4 and raises the action speed by 21%. No, that's wrong. I think it's 1 point something. God, the translation in this game are just awful. Let me just get into a quick rant before I start going over the character. I'm getting really sick and tired of every single time I play through the story of so many translation errors and also reading the descriptions of the characters for these videos. Is it really that difficult to just make sure the translations are on point? A simple scrub through all this stuff would find these issues. Do they have no QA people on this game? It is really frustrating, okay? I understand sometimes maybe a couple words get messed up or some padding between words. Okay, fine. But this is ridiculous. Every time I read through the translations, I always find something that makes no damn sense. I mean, for God's sakes, 21 times? There is no way any character would get an action speed increase by 21 times. Lost Stories, get your shit together. Well, not really Lost Stories, but the people translating this, so Como Games, get your shit together. Okay, now let's talk about the character herself. Now, the interesting part about this Kaguya is that as a healer, her abilities are not exactly tailored towards healing. As I've said before in previous videos, the best healers in the game are the ones that either prevent damage or have an additional healing effect in addition to their normal attack. This Kaguya does neither, yet she's really powerful. And why is that? Well, in exchange for those type of abilities, her main effect is really powerful. You're essentially slowing down enemies within range and then increasing damage dealt upon them. So in a way, it is preventing damage, but in a different way. As the old saying goes, the best defense is a good offense. So Kaguya's approach here is to just kill everyone faster, so you don't have to worry about an additional healing effect or preventing damage. So I kind of get that. Now, another thing about this character that I think is kind of underrated is the fact that she has really high durability. If we scroll up here, you see that she has over 2,000 health and 305 defense. Compare that to every other healer in the game and she blows them out of the water easily. Then you look at her attack power, 949. Again, blows out every single healer out of the water. This is really powerful. So yeah, you don't have traditional healing effects, but you have a really powerful pilot just on stats alone. And then on top of all that, she has a fast redeployment time, which means you can move her around the battlefield, replace multiple healers on a team with a character like this, which is why I really like her. So in some way, she reminds me of those sub healers, for example, Yuffie, the new C2 that came in this particular banner, or Maid Shirley. But in some respects, also better because while you don't instantly heal when you deploy her, you do have her 949 attack power per each heal, which is, again, really good. Now, what's crazy is I haven't even talked about the other ability, which essentially buffs Lelouch. Not only are you lowering his deployment cost, but you're also increasing his action speed. And that's what I really like about this character, because down the road, well, first of all, even now, but down the road, there's going to be more Lelouches released. If you're curious about those future units, just check out websites like App Media, which goes over all of them. And as more broken Lelouches come out, this character's ceiling only gets better. That is why, compared to every other character on this banner, Kaguya is technically the best one, because she only gets better as more Lelouches come out. So the second ability is also really good, but the first one's amazing as well, and something else I should also mention is the fact that it's very unique. Most pilots in the game don't do this, even in the Japanese side, which is why almost 2 years later, this is still arguably one of the best healers in the game. And that's something very important to understand. Characters with very unique abilities will be useful months, even years down the road, versus characters that have a very good ability but can be replaced by other pilots. That's the difference between this Kaguya and New Year's C2. And that's why this Kaguya is OP now and will only get better as the months go on. Now let's talk about the new Kallen. Okay, we are at the store. What are they offering this time? Yep, the same stuff. Crystals are probably the most sought after thing here. Okay, let's go to Kallen. I'm going to click on her. She is a rank 3 strategy type pilot. Let's go to the abilities. Attack and defense up, high upon placement increases the defense and attack power of only one ally unit within range, excluding this unit by 35% for 27.5 seconds, and she has a deployment cost reduction for everyone in this sub-faction, and then of course Lelouch by 3. So that's okay, I guess. I kind of would prefer if she had one for herself and then the faction, but Lelouch is pretty good too. So when you first look at this Kallen, you'll probably think, nah, she's not that great. But consider the following before you write her off. She's really good in arena mode and in Nightmare Frame boss battle events where you have to power up usually 1 to 2 pilots to take out either the boss or the player you're going against their deployed units. So from that standpoint, she's not bad. The 35% increase attack and defense is better than other pilots, for example Rakshata, who does a 27 I believe or 25, although that's for everyone who's deployed and Kallen is just for the one pilot you select. So it's a trade-off between would you rather increase by a smaller amount but give it to everybody, or a higher amount to one pilot. And again, in arena mode and Nightmare Frame boss battle events, Kallen really shines there. Now because she reduces the cost to deploy Lelouch, you could put her with teams with him if you got to get the cost down and you don't have Kaguya. So I understand there's some utility there. Now sometimes, and this doesn't happen often, but you may have to deal extra damage to certain enemies. Maybe it's the invisible ones from the harder missions, a boss, I don't know. But regardless, if you do, Kallen could help in boosting the attack power of a given pilot, and that can come in handy every now and then. But as I said, it's a very niche application. Most of the time, she's great for events. And you know what? You'll be happy to have her in those situations, which is why I recommend to fully upgrade her, even if you don't plan on actually using her for most of the game. Now, one question you might have, and I think it's kind of obvious, but I'll answer anyways. If Kaguya only gets better as more Lelouches come out, why doesn't it apply to Kallen? Well, the difference is the fact that 1, Kaguya also has an action speed increase to every Lelouch pilot, and 2, unlike Kallen, Kaguya's main ability is really good, so as an added bonus, you also have the buffs to Lelouch. In the case of Kallen, you're really just using her for that deployment cost reduction, and the attack boost is okay, but it's nothing compared to Kaguya's debuffs on enemies. That's why Kaguya will still be better months, even years down the road, and this Kallen will not. For now though, I still like her and I still think she's solid, but I do acknowledge the fact that in most cases, she's not that great. Let's move on now to New Year C2. New Year C2 is a rank 4 Annihilator pilot, and let's get to the abilities. First, she has Hoping for a Lucky New Year. Upon deployment, and every 20 seconds thereafter, increases the Nightmare Frame skill targets for this unit by 4 for 20 seconds, and increases the speed that this unit's skill gauge, Nightmare Frame skill gauge, fills up by 87.5%. You guys missed something there, but you know how that goes. Next, she has a continuous HP recovery 3 seconds after deployment. And every 15 seconds thereafter, all deployed ally units are healed by 3% for 13.75 seconds at 0.625 second intervals. That was quite a mouthful. What stands out for me about this particular pilot is the fact that she has really high range attack power, but relatively low cost. And that's really good because a lot of times you have to choose between those things, where if you want to use a pilot with high range attack power, you have to accept the fact they might cost a lot to deploy. So the C2 gives you a really powerful pilot with a lower cost. I really like that part. A little underrated, I think, compared to the rest of her abilities, but definitely something to keep in mind. When it comes to her abilities, they're really good. The ability to increase the skill gauge really quickly will help with the Gawain or any other Nightmare Frame. I specifically mentioned the Gawain because it gives her a skill boost, plus it has to charge passively, so her ability will make that process go even faster. And because she increases her attack targets with the Nightmare Frame skill gauge, she can take out way more enemies, and because the skill gauge will fill up faster, you can kill more enemies at a faster rate than most units. Now combine that with Taizo, and it's even more broken. And by the way, I didn't mention this with Kaguya, but obviously Taizo will make her better, so will Zero Lelouch, and of course Rakshata. So just keep that in mind as well. All these pilots are part of the Black Knights. But now let's talk about the main reason why this C2 is so powerful: the passive heal ability. Now what's really frustrating is that if you have have Halloween Valletta. You might be thinking, well, if I have her, do I need C2? And again, just like the conversation between Kallen versus Rakshata, it's the same thing here. Do you want a slightly lower healing rate to all pilots that are deployed, or do you want a higher rate but only to pilots in range? That's the difference between Valletta and C2. Valletta only heals pilots in range at a higher rate than C2 does, but C2 heals everyone that's deployed, which I think overall is a better ability. What's crazy about this C2 is that she basically does what the new Yuffie does, or Maid Shirley, but as an attacker, which means she basically replaces having a healer on the team for most situations. Obviously in the harder missions, that's not the case, but generally speaking, having C2 on your team replaces having healers, and she's arguably one of the best sub healers in the game. I still think Yuffie is better, but not by much. And that's why the C2 is so powerful. She's broken with the Gwen, she heals everyone who's deployed, replaces several units you wouldn't have to use, has a low deployment cost, and really high attack power. So you might be thinking then, why did I say that Kaguya is better? Well, there are some problems with this C2 unlike the new Kaguya. For starters, her first year anniversary boost is not that great. Kaguya's, by the way, is fantastic, but C2's is not. All they did was reduce her deployment cost. And the reason why that's not good enough is because the biggest problem with this C2 is her durability. If you haven't noticed, she has low defense, and the health is okay, I guess, but it could be better. The problem is, later on in the game, there's going to be stronger enemies that can one-shot her. Now, the healing effect and the Night Frame skill gauge are supposed to compensate for this, but eventually it will not be enough, and she'll get taken out a lot. So that's the first issue with this C2. The second is power creep. Unlike Kaguya, C2's abilities, regardless of how powerful they are very generic. There are many pilots in the game right now that do something similar, and there will be better ones in the future that improve upon this C2's ability, much like how this C2 improved upon Swimsuit C2. That's the problem. Like I said before with Kaguya, the more unique ability is, the better the character will be down the road. That's why D-Tard and Ashford Lelouch, even on the Japanese side, I believe are what, S rank or S plus or something. They're really high up there because cloaking and stunning, believe it or not, are still really powerful abilities versus this New Year C2 who's gone down the tiers over the years. It's not really over the years, but it kind of feels like that. And that's the problem with this C2. Her abilities are awesome, but they will get power crept by better pilots, and her durability sucks, which means down the road she will get one-shot by stronger enemies. And by the way, this issue also applies to Halloween Lelouch, but because he cloaks himself, it's not as big of a problem because, well, if you can't see him, you can't kill him. With New Year's C2, that's just not the case. And despite what I said, this C2 is still really good, and you should definitely go after her.
Very poor choice of words.
If you have the Gwen or plan on summoning the new C2 that comes out with the Gwen/Harken melee weapon down the road. She's still really a powerful Annihilator, the healing effect is OP as hell, and she combos well with other pilots in the Black Knight faction. So if I was to rank the pilots by strongest to weakest, it would be Kaguya, C2, and then New Year's Kallen. Is this one of the best banners in the game? That's very debatable. Between this one Halloween, I constantly go back and forth, at least when it comes to the banners in R1. Obviously R2 is a whole nother thing, which I'll eventually have to do an updated tier list on. But until then though, this is definitely one of the best banners in the game. If you've been saving your Sakura diet for that one banner to go crazy on, this would be one of those banners. At the same time, keep in mind we are going to get the half anniversary banner, which I believe is either this month or the next, and that has a really powerful Rakshata. Anyways guys, Happy New Year's in March. These holiday mismatch banners are really funny to me. And if you enjoyed this video, check out my fun compilation of why the Shinkiro is broken right here, and all the changes we're getting as part of the half anniversary event, which is right here. Go check out those videos right now.